Back in the beginning of summer, I got a real urge to get a Starglow or Starsoft filter. I was after the Alan Wallace Starglow filter, but that was always out of stock and was a bit pricey for my liking. So eventually I found this Nisi Starsoft filter on eBay for, I think it was £60. I have used it over the summer to see if I can get a hang of it, and I kind of struggle with this thing a bit. So let's get into this and let me tell you about this filter in particular. Right, the first thing, it comes in a lovely leather pouch. Not bad first appearances, but the pouch itself really annoying because it opens that way. It's just really hard work to get the filter out without getting it covered in fingerprints. This flap here needs to open from the top, then you could slide the filter out that way and catch it. This way, firstly it gets stuck in the case a lot, then because it's so wide you struggle, so you got to go kind of like that, then switch to like that to get the filter out. The filter is a magnet for fingerprints anyway, so that really bugs me about this case. Second thing with the filter is it has got writing on the top here to let you know that that is the top. It is so faint that it's virtually impossible to see at night, and you need to know which is the top because the filter effect is only on the top 2/3 of the filter. So the idea of that is when you slot it into a filter holder, the bottom third doesn't apply any effect to the image, so you end up with a clear foreground and only the sky affected by the filter effect. But there's other reasons why that's a nightmare to use, and I'll come on to them later. So this is my Nikon 20mm f1.8G, and it's fairly typical of the type of lens you would use for astrophotography, and that in itself presents some problems with the filter. So first thing, you can't use the lens hood. Secondly, a lot of lenses that you would use for astro, like wide angle 20mm, 18mm, 16mm, have got a really bulbous front element. Luckily on the Nikon lens, that means that the front element is below the lip of the front of the lens, but only by a millimetre or so. Now I know that on the Sigma lenses you can't put the filter flat like that on the lens because the front element of the lens is above the front of, say, this part of the lens here, so you would end up chinking this on the front element of the lens. So let's slot this into the camera bag, hope the skies stay clear, and go out and do some photography. This annoys me, come on, let's do it up, there we go. Weirdly, I've come down the beach to show you how I use the Nisi Starsoft filter in daylight. Unfortunately it's so windy down here, the audio will be terrible and the camera footage will probably be really shaky, so I'm going to retreat to home, film it at home, explain it there, and then I'll go surfing. So I'm back home now. I'm going to use this wooden mushroom, pretend that's a tree. Got my Nikon Z5 set up here, and we're going to use this chocolate bar Snickers to represent the Milky Way. I know I could have got a Milky Way chocolate bar or a Mars bar or even a star bar to represent the Milky Way, but they didn't have them in stock, so Snickers it is. So we've got our filter here, so there's the writing with a top. Now the graduation starts about here, so ideally what you would do is hold the filter or use a filter holder and try and get that so that the top half of the filter that is got the star glow stuff on it, or the bit that makes the star glow, only affects the sky, and the bottom half affects the foreground. So you'd hold it like that, take this exposure, and job done. But this filter isn't as simple as that. This filter represents or presents the same problems as using a graduated ND filter would do. So obviously a graduated ND filter would be darker at the top, slowly fading to lighter, and no effect at the bottom. And you'd have to use this in the same way as that, and they both present, or they both have the same issues when you're using them, and we'll get onto that now. So we've got our tree here, nicely silhouetted against the night sky. The foreground's here, so let's bring in the Milky Way. So here's the Milky Way, and in the northern hemisphere the Milky Way core is going to be about here. So obviously you want the whole of the Milky Way that you're photographing to be affected evenly by the Starsoft filter. The problem with that is that obviously the tree's sticking up into the filter affected area, and that makes the tree less sharp than it should be, and the foreground less sharp than it should be. If you're fortunate enough to live in the southern hemisphere, then quite often the Milky Way be parallel to the horizon, so the core could be up here. And that works a lot better for the filter, because you could have from here down not affected by the star glow effect, and from here up have the effect. Works perfectly. But for any of us where the Milky Way either comes down at this sort of angle or that sort of angle to the horizon, the filter becomes a lot harder to use. Coming up next are a couple of images that I've taken, one of the Milky Way, and you can see that the whole foreground is just really soft, not sharp, it's just fuzzy and horrible. That's not necessarily a problem if that's your intended outcome. And the next image here, you can see exactly the same problem. Well, this image here, you can see that we've got one that's affected by the star glow filter and one that isn't, and you can see how much the star glow filter makes the stars pop. So it's a very subjective thing of whether you think that the image that the star glow filter produces is worth the downsides of using the star glow filter. So that is why largely this filter lives in my camera bag, stays in there, and I forget that I even own the thing. It's one of those things that it's a bit of a pain to use. The results that it produces are very meh. You either love it or hate it. I personally don't find the pop that it gives the stars to be worth the destruction that it does to the foreground. The problem is that when you line up a composition at night, believe it or not, this night sky moves so fast that you might only have 15 or 20 minutes to get the shot you want before you have to move your camera around and reset the composition. So faffing around with a filter can be a real pain. If you want the foreground subject to be sharp, you either need to get the graduated line in exactly the right place on the lens, in which case you need to use a filter holder. And if you're going to go to that kind of hassle, why not just use a star tracker? Because if you want to use this filter and have this foreground sharp, the only real way I can see of doing it is to do sky replacements. So if you're going to get into masking and layering for sky replacements, why not just do a 2-minute exposure with a star tracker and whack that into your image, and then you've got the best of both worlds. So this, for me, I'm not going to say it's a waste of money, but it's a bit of a novelty thing. Once you've used it a few times, you just forget you own it and just shoot normally. Sorry if that's disappointing, but that's my honest opinion of these type of filters. It's not just the Nisi filter, it's the Alan Wallace filter. Exactly the same problems, in my opinion. Yeah, not much more to say on that, but if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. So if you have noticed one massive continuity blunder in this, then you can reward yourself with a chocolate bar as well. See you later. Bye.